in a cute little.
I know, isn't it fun?
Yeah. Feels like we're in a cute little sunroom. These are great windows.
Yeah, aren't they great? I love them. I'm glad we're doing this time so we can have the windows open. Cheers.
Pretty cheers. I have
Welcome.
the best Western.
You know, only the best Western for you.
Only the best Western of Steubenville.
I'm sorry. I need to get more Among the Lilies mugs so you can have a real mug and we can be drinking out of it. I'm sorry. I feel like we've switched. Like, we're funny because that's the chair I normally sit in, but we switched. I'm like, okay, this is your show. So
So tell me, how are you doing it?
Can I lay on the couch and tell you all my problems?
What emotions are you experiencing right now?
You know, anger. Anger is always my emotion.
Oh, really?
I'm really bad about experiencing other emotions.
And anger.
Anger. It's always anger. I have a good friend of mine. She's amazing. She does theophostic prayer. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
Or they call it something different now. TPM, maybe is what it's called now. Okay. Anyhow, but you pray through different things and experiences, and she's lovely. She's Avila's godmother, and I've known her longer than I've known Matt. So I've known her forever. So like, she's not my spiritual director, but when I'm in between spiritual directors, she's my girl that I call and I just share. And my thing is always anger. And she's like, well, Cameron, now that we're in the anger box, we're going to come over here and go through these things. And I'm like, why do I not feel other emotions? She's like, it's okay.
Why don't I feel? Like, you don't cry, you don't feel sad?
I don't.
Wow.
It's very rare.
Just anger.
I did cry during this training that I went through, and it was like a lot of abuse stuff. And she's like, everybody in the room, faces were red, tears bellowing down. I had a couple tears that came, but I'm just not.
Yeah. We
went to see a movie with a couple friend of ours, and Matt and her were sitting by each other. And so it was me, Matt, my friend, and then her husband. And Matt and her were bawling, sobbing. It was it Black Hawk Down, maybe? What's the movie where Just One More Soul? And he's there and he's saving them.
I may not have seen it.
Okay, yeah, it's so good. Whatever it is. It's based on a true story. It's a guy because of
It's not Saving Private Ryan. It's Black Hawk Down.
I don't know what it's called.
Okay, because I haven't seen
Mel Gibson directed it. And basically there was this massive cliff, and this guy wanted to go to war, but he's what's the religion where you don't bear arms?
Oh, like not a Jansen, like
I don't know, something.
Like when you're
Christian,
a pacifist. Oh, it's like a Christian.
Yeah, but he has like
I can't remember.
I forget, but he doesn't want to do that. And they're like, what good can you be on the battlefield? He's like, I want to be a medic. Like, I want to help people. Like, I'll do this.
Okay.
And so the guys were like really mean to him during training. And then,
I remember. Okay.
But he single-handedly saved like hundreds of guys. And then they thought that their whole unit died, and he stayed up there and his hands were bleeding. He lowered them down one by one with ropes and just kept lowering these bodies and finding these people. And some of them were mean to him. So like this one guy who it's like, you don't belong out in war. Like his legs were blown off and he's saving them. He's like, no, leave me. And he's like, no. And he's like, I'm really sorry, I was mean to you, you know? And like every time he lowered someone down this cliff, his hands were bleeding. And it was a beautiful movie. It was very moving. But Matt and my friend are bawling, and the husband and I are like, wow, that is like really emotional. What's going on in there? Like, that is beautiful. And they're like, what's wrong with you two? Why are you not crying? Like, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, it is. It's beautiful and sad. I just, it comes out differently, maybe.
Yeah, I'm a crier. I can watch You've Got Mail and still cry.
Really?
Like, I'm gonna play like, so beautiful.
Yeah, that's Matt too. Matt's like, if you don't cry during this song, you don't have a heart. Like,
oh my god.
Well, that's just not true, honey.
It's not true.
I don't feel as deep as he feels.
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny.
The melancholic feel level is so much greater.
Right.
Yeah. But sanguines feel a lot too, right?
Apparently, yes, because I'm a crier. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm choleric sanguine, and I'm like almost tied for both, but I'm not a crier for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I probably need more healing, and then I'll be a crier.
Right, let's go deep into that heart. Yeah. I've shoved down all my feelings deep down inside.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's been interesting going through like trauma training type stuff.
Because some people they do that when they have trauma.
Yeah.
Especially when they've had, I was reading a book about narcissism, which my friends like to make fun of me because, not that I think everyone's a narcissist, but my God, narcissist, it's, it's bad. I'm joking, not all the time, but when I see signs,
you're like, those are signs of narcissism.
Yeah.
Like, you're not necessarily a narcissist, but you need to see what you're doing.
When you're very manipulative and gaslight, and a lot of times it's very charismatic kind of, yeah. So I've worked for people who were narcissists, and I had studied psychology in college, but when I started working for this one narcissist, I like started researching it again, and I was like, oh. So anyways, I was reading this book called Narcissism by a psychologist, and he was talking about how narcissists, he's like, none of them had a good childhood. That's the reason. Why is because they, from trauma, their parents either overindulged them emotionally or underindulged them emotionally, and they've essentially shoved down their feelings so deep they create like a false self.
Yeah.
It's a personality disorder.
Yeah.
I mean, so they're creating this like, and he had this one woman in his office that he was like, no, tell me about your childhood. What was it like? She's like, oh, it was great. And he's like, no narcissist childhood was great. And she just has a smile. And he's like, tell me about your father. She's like, oh yeah, he used to abuse me. And just had this
all through a smile.
All through a smile. And I was like, oh yeah, it's like I personally have met people. I met somebody recently who had that kind of, it was like a shell. It was like talking to, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then come to find out this young woman had been abused in her childhood and sexually abused. And I'm like, that makes complete sense, because you're like shoving, you're like, I don't want to feel.
You have to disassociate, disconnect.
I don't want to feel the pain. Yeah. It's too painful. And so I've kind of created this,
you know what else, where you find that? We had a friend who was in the porn industry, and her husband was a horrible, horrible man and got her into the industry because he wanted to make money. Yeah. And she said that she did that. She's like, I had to be a different person. I had to put on like this vacant, like you could almost, she was saying most of the girls, you look at their eyes and you just see vacancy. Yeah. Like you're not there.
No one's home.
And then no one's home. And then maybe you're not using drugs, but that happens anyhow to survive that.
Right.
And then she said afterwards, it's like people, like grown women acting like little girls, like sucking their thumb, rocking, shaking because of the trauma they just experienced on camera, on stage for everyone to see.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, but she said that, and then we had another girl that Matt and I worked with. She was actually a former teen of ours when we lived in Ireland. Beautiful, beautiful, sweet girl. Found herself stuck for money and didn't want to go to her parents. And it wasn't a huge debt. I forget what it was. I think in the beginning it was like $1,000. She needed $1,000.
Oh my god.
So a friend of hers said the way to get it was stripping.
Oh.
And then she's like, I think she was 18. Beautiful girl. She was in a foreign country and started stripping, and she said the whole time she's yelling horrible things at these guys in her head, but she's putting on a smile and trying to be sexy or whatever. And she's like, and then I couldn't make any money because I had to take all the alcohol I had to drink to just get up the nerve to get on stage. She's like, I was breaking even every night. Like I still didn't have the money.
Oh,
and so we were really poor missionaries at the time, and Matt was like, no, we're gonna get you the money. Like, what if we, like, how much money is it? Okay, we're going to get you the money. Yeah. And we called a priest friend. We took whatever money we had, which wasn't much. But we're like, okay, we're going to put a dent at your stuff.
To your debt. Yeah, like a dent.
A dent to your debt. Yeah. And then we called a priest friend, and he paid the rest. I think it was, like, out of pocket. And he just gave us the money. And he's like, she doesn't need to know it's from me, but here's the money. And we didn't tell her who it was. Yeah. But we called. Matt told her, listen, I love you so much. I think we named her June. I think that was her like stage name, June. And then we wrote about her. Her story's written in one of Matt's porn books. And called and to make sure that she wasn't working anymore. And then jerk on the phone. Matt's like, I just want to punch the guy in the face, right? But he's like, well, I can't tell you if she works here or not. But yeah, maybe you said something to June and you lost me a good employee. And Matt's like, you're welcome. I'm glad I lost you a good employee. Yeah. I hope she doesn't come back. If she comes back, please call me. Don't let her do this. This is horrible.
It's interesting. Alob, our friend Andrew Laubacher, and he loves, like, he prays for people, and a lot of people are healed that he prays for, but he's also really getting into nutrition, and he's he even talks about like toxic, like I'm reading the book The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
And how trauma affects our bodies and stays in our bodies, and how it comes out in our bodies, and how it changes our brain chemistry. But even years ago, I remember a woman I met at the Theology of the Body Institute talking about how different sin literally affects different parts of your body. So she's like, when you have like sexual sin, a lot of times it's in your gut, or like, and even abuse or whatever, how it sticks in your gut, and you feel like there's a lot. I was like, interesting, because it's like you feel that and how different stuff comes out in your body. And so Andrew was just saying, he's like, a life of virtue is literally like the healthiest thing for your body. And because people can convince themselves like, oh, sex work is great work. It's like, no, you have literally shoved the feeling, like all that so far deep, and that is coming out in your body, that trauma, because you don't just start doing sex work if there's no
there's trauma.
Oh, well, what's his name? Adam Young from The Place We Find Ourselves is like, there's always the trauma before the trauma.
Yeah.
And often it's like, like when your parents, like, why do you go to sex? Like, what's going on in your family? And I'm like, yes. Like, there's a trauma before the trauma. There's a reason you're going here. Is because you don't feel loved,
safe, or loved here. Yeah.
So it's just to me it's fascinating, but it gives you an understanding and a compassion for people. Like when you work with even people who do horrific things. Yeah. We were talking about this last night. Like when you think of them as little kids, like,
I know, it breaks your heart.
It breaks your heart because they didn't become a monster.
No, it's like, why you weren't given enough hugs as a child?
Well, it's like you experienced severe trauma to become to do such horrific things. Like, it doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, my kids have made that point before with abortionists. They're like, how could anyone do that, let alone a doctor? And I'm like, you know what, honey? They are not very healthy. Like, in their minds, they weren't taught this is a sacred gift. Like, a baby is a gift, and we want to be careful with them. And they're so disconnected, they just don't think they're babies. And they're like, how could you look at a baby and not think it's a baby? Or even ultrasounds. You're like, Mom, but that looks like a baby. I'm like, totally get it. And you are so right. But people like get these blinders and they don't.
The disconnect, the dissociation.
Yes.
Like when you hear when you hear the conversion stories of abortionists, it's because like something happened, whether it was that one doctor whose, I think, son got in a car accident or something. And after that, every abortion, he was like, this is someone's child. Yeah. It was like, what happened? And and think about this. I mean, the demonic element too.
Oh yeah.
That if you have the demonic like oppression and it's literally blinding you to the truth of this, right? And there have been other abortionists, same thing. They're like, at some point it was like,
it's normally a snap.
I snapped out of it and it was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, I can't do this.
This is a person, like these are children. It's so strange. I mean, it's so strange that like there really is.
And I think that's also the power of prayer. Like I've heard situations where the abortionist, like it's the same people out front praying for them and saying, I hope your eyes could be open. And like one guy, he was like legit in the middle of an abortion and his eyes just opened.
Like the scales
fell. Exactly. The scales fell and it was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And they get queasy. And like they've done hundreds of abortions prior to this point, but this one they can't do.
Right.
They've got to step away.
But I think about like even in my own conversion, it does feel like I was raised Catholic, but when I say conversion, I was like, I didn't revert to anything because I never was.
Yeah,
like,
that's kind of how
I feel like I had a real conversion of heart and I felt like I became Catholic for the first time because the first 18 years of my life, I was just kind of going through the motions, but it felt like scales fell from my eyes. Like, what in the world? Like, it's like a whole new world was opened to me. So it's completely understandable that like there's like this veil over you that you just can't see the reality or the truth of something. And then
I think that's part of the beauty of these healing ministries, like what Dr. Bob's doing, Sister Miriam, like The Place We Find Ourselves, that Adam guy. Like I think there's a lot going on that's like, okay, like we got to look at that. Where is that coming from? Why am I so? And I think especially when we're so offended by something, it's like, okay, why are we so offended?
Yeah, what triggered that?
Why
are you experiencing that? Like, go deeper. And most people don't want to. Most people.
Well, it's easier to point at you. No, this isn't my issue. It's your fault.
Right.
You said something that upset me. So you are the one to blame. I need to attack you. And it's like, that's not going to help anyone. Like,
and we never look at our own.
We need to look at like, okay, Lord, why did that stir something up?
Right.
Matt and I had something the other day and he had no idea where I was coming from. And I didn't want to tell him about it, but I like kind of brought it up and he's like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Like, why didn't you tell me this sooner? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't like talking about it. But it was like, I had to bring that up and be like, just, this is how I'm feeling, or this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And so and I'll say like our wounds are just rubbing up against each other. Like Matt and I are, any intimate relationship, right? Your wounds are going to rub up against each other. And to have someone that loves you enough to say, let's look at that. Like, why is, and that's why I think prayer is so important, to like step away and be like, all right, Lord, why was I so overly offended by that?
Right.
And it's like, there's something in me. And then that I can actually change. I can't change what you said.
Right. And most people don't know themselves, and most people don't have any interior life. So they never ask those questions. I mean, obviously that's the beauty of therapy, is people are for the first time starting to ask the questions, like, and the therapist is asking them the questions. And but most I was thinking, like, man, most people go through life just never asking why did I get angry about that? Why did, like, where is that coming from? And the beauty of the healing, like the Dr. Bate, it's like, well, think about these wounds that come from your childhood, like this wound of rejection. And because of this wound of rejection, you're trying to constantly prove yourself, or trying constantly to be right, or because you're so afraid of people rejecting you, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I think that it is painful. It's painful to go in and deal with your wounds, or how Bobby and I got to go in September to Healing the Whole Person in Louisiana.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, yeah, there were some wounds that I've been dealing with since I was 18 that I'm like, okay, when I was 18, I recognized that I had those wounds, and I've been dealing with that for, 20 years. But man, there are other ones that I was like, oh,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I just this year realized that there were some that I'm like, oh my goodness, okay. Yeah. And so it's not easy, and it's painful, and it takes time. You want to kind of just get over it, like move on, but that's not how it works. It takes
And I also find that like my friend Patty came in town when I was just really not doing well health wise, and we kind of did our own little retreat, and we just rented like an Airbnb, and it was so good, and we just sat and prayed together. She made food. My body just wasn't in a good place. I was having trouble walking and stuff, and she was just so awesome and loving, and it was the best retreat because it was just hanging out with a good friend, chatting. And then sometimes like we'd be chatting. She's like, Cameron, would you mind if we prayed about this? And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. And but she knows me. I do want to pray about it. I do want to like dig deep. And so she would pray with me, and then she'd like write everything down. This is actually my journal from it. So she would like pray with me, and then just like fill up pages and pages and pages of like, this is what's going on.
Did she write that, or did you write that?
She wrote this.
Okay.
And so like she just like filled up a notebook. These are all my wounds. You're welcome, everyone. But what's so great is she would ask Jesus into it. So like there would be a situation. I'm like, oh gosh, I have no idea how to handle it. And she's like, let's just invite Jesus in. And it was so simple. She just invite Jesus in. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Jesus doesn't want me. Like I had this one thing. Where we stayed, there was a pond, like a big pond, little lake, whatever. And there was a rowboat and some flowing things. So I had a lot of stuff. Like the Lord very much speaks to me in and through nature. Yeah. And I was sharing about a time when Peter was a baby. He was a NICU baby. So Brian Regan's joke about what it's like having a fourth baby. He's like, well, pretend that you're swimming with three kids. Or Gaffigan. Yeah. Who did I say?
Brian Regan.
Oh, no, Gaffigan.
Which I can quote all his stuff.
I know, I love him too. No, but Gaffigan. And he's like, imagine you're in a pool and you're drowning, and then someone hands you a baby. Right. That was my experience with Peter. So he was like a NICU baby. He kept almost dying. He was connected to all these things. I had horrible postpartum depression. And so I was talking about something, and I said I just felt like I was trying to get words for the emotion, and I kept coming back to like drowning and all this stuff. And she's like, okay, invite Jesus into that, And the whole thing was, I felt guilty that I couldn't get everyone out of the water. Like everybody was depending on me, and now everyone's drowning. Yeah. And this is horrible. And like through inviting Jesus into it, Jesus was just like, I just want you to keep their heads above water. You're doing an amazing job. All of your heads are above water. Yeah. I'm the one that it's my job to get y'all out of the water. So just keep your eyes on me and keep treading. It's okay. I will make it easier. And it was amazing, like through this prayer experience. And then it's something like, Cameron, just put your feet down. Just put your feet down. And it's like, wait a minute, I can stand here. And it's like, yeah, I told you, I've got this. Like, this is hard. Yes, you're dealing with a lot, but it's not as hard as you're making it being. You're trying to save everyone, and I don't want that. You can stand. They can't stand, so just hold everyone as you're standing there, and then I will bring you guys on land. Like, I've got all of this. Yeah. And just this, like feeling like you could take a deep breath. Like, oh, I'm not responsible for saving everyone. Okay, I could let go of that.
Yeah.
And then just the freedom afterwards. And then you bring up whatever the thing was from the beginning. And it's like, do you still have that anxiety? And you're like, no, I don't. And it's like that. It just changes.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Yeah.
Thank God, dude. Thank God for friends like that.
Right? And healing and like knowing, like I don't know. I think there's something really beautiful to it where I feel like I thought before, for you to heal from trauma, you have to bring it all to the surface, feel all the pain, go through all that, and then and only then can Jesus invite in healing. But I don't think that anymore.
Well, it's just like it's like increment. You're bringing little things at a time, because it's quite a journey of. It doesn't just get done. You know, it's not like, all right, let's do a round of antibiotics. We're done.
Yeah. No,
Which,
it's not that.
Actually, that round of antibiotics sometimes makes
it worse on your gut. Yeah, then you got to recover
Speaking
from that.
from experience, both, it's like I was on 2 months of antibiotics and my gut was wrecked. Horrible. Like so bad. And it's like, then you got to go and heal the gut.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, just because you go to a retreat and you it's like, okay, so but it's going to keep bringing up stuff. Our whole lives, we're going to be on this journey of healing if we allow Jesus to, and we're not afraid to bring up kind of the dark, like the darkness, like needs to come to the light. And the devil loves, I always kind of say, like, the devil loves when we keep things in the dark. He loves when
he owns it.
Yeah. Because he has power over it. And that's where the lies can continue. And we believe the lies when we keep all that stuff in the dark. And he loves to keep us isolated from other people. Like, oh, you're the only one who struggles with this. No one else. Like those kind of lies. Like, oh, you're disgusting. No one else understands.
If they knew the real you. And no one ever felt this way. Like, if you were a better woman, you wouldn't experience this.
Right.
Or if you were, whatever. Yeah. If you were a good mom, you wouldn't be thinking what you're thinking right now.
Right.
But no, we all have our breaking points and limits, and we need to ask for help.
Right.
And we need to say, I can't do this alone.
Right. We all do have our breaking points.
Yeah.
That's why when people are just kind of assume that like every Catholic needs to have however many children, I'm like, no. I kind of can realize, like, no, there are moms who definitely can't. They would break them.
Yeah.
To have, just every personality is different, every temperament's different, and we've been raised. I'm like, not everyone could like there are literally
and some bodies can't do that. Like my body, like almost like both Peter and I almost died, and then I almost died with the one after, and like my body just was done. Like I love babies. Like from the time I was little, I couldn't wait to be pregnant and have kids. Like I don't know, I've always had such a strong desire to be a mom, and I was 34 or 35 when that door closed. I just was so sick. And and it was like, nope, your body's not functioning. You have sick organs that need to be removed. And I remember going through and like being so angry that I had to have a hysterectomy. And I knew in the moment, I'm like, okay, if I have to do this, I need to scream it from the rooftop because I don't want it. I think when it's certain things like that, like having a hysterectomy, like my mom even said to me, she's like, Cameron, this is going to be the best gift you ever gave yourself. And like, that hurts so bad. And I was like, no, I don't want this. I don't want to close the door to having children. I wish I could have more. But I had good friends of mine that ended up having hysterectomies and didn't tell me because they thought I would think they were less. And it was medical stuff.
Right.
It was a medical reason.
Right.
And they're like, well, no, because you're Catholic. You guys are against this. And I'm like, no. As Catholics, we're against sterilization. But just because you have sick organs in your body that needs to be removed, that does not mean you're against life. And I remember like talking about it, and so many women like had lived with this horrible guilt for so long, and they're like, I've never told anyone because I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed, and the devil uses it and keeps it in the dark. I'm like, you're a horrible mom. That's why you had to have a hysterectomy. And a part of you was relieved. You don't have to do charting anymore or whatever, and that
Oh yeah, that happens too with people who struggle with infertility.
Yes.
Like the amount of I had a friend who they were struggling. I have a lot of friends who were struggling to get pregnant. But one of them, she worked for at a Catholic place, and one of the coworkers, after 18, however a year and a half maybe of trying to get pregnant, they weren't pregnant yet, and the coworker was like, you can only use NFP for grave reasons, and I was like, I
Oh, I would have hit her.
Yeah, I was like,
It was a woman, wasn't it?
in the grace. Well, of course, right. I was like, I don't know how you have the grace to not punch that person in the face. I mean, I've never punched somebody, but you kind of.
Oh, I have.
In
it feels really good. I've punched
You
multiple people
have?
in the face.
Really?
Yeah. It's like my go-to
I
emotion.
slapped one guy in my
So
life.
the first time I did it really bad, I broke a boy's nose. I was in 2nd grade.
Oh my god.
He said that I couldn't play soccer unless I made him let me play. Okay, so he said I couldn't play soccer unless I made him let me play. And I was like, all right, I'll make you. And so I punched him. So I got to play. It was great. But then the nuns got me. I got sent to the principal's office, and this nun's talking to me about it. And it's like, Cameron, do you know why you're here? I'm like, sister, I need you to know he asked me to do that. He asked you to punch him in the face. I'm like, sister, he did.
Okay, I totally see how your children are.
Yes,
like, now,
right.
like knowing your kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see little Cameron being like a 2nd grader, being like, he asked me to.
He asked me. I did him a favor.
Yeah, this is totally logical.
Yeah, and then she's like, no, he didn't ask you. I'm like, he said I had to make him let me play, and that was the only way. And the guy was a bully. I'm like, sister, you know he's a bully. He's mean to so many people.
Yeah.
He's like, Cameron, it doesn't give you the right to like look at him. He had his nose was broken. He had 2 black eyes. He's a little nice back on crying, and I was like, I really think he deserved it, sister.
Oh, you are your child. Yes, your child. I could totally see this. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
But you know what? He wasn't a bully after that. Like I should not have punched him. Legit,
Right,
should
we're
not have punched him.
advocating punching.
No, but I've punched multiple people since then. Yeah, I definitely. I'm telling you, my go-to emotion's anger and injustice. I can't stand injustice.
Yeah.
So I was in high school, and there was this guy who just thought he was all that, and I just didn't like him. He was very cocky, very conceited. He was a lot bigger than me, and I probably shouldn't have gotten in his face, but he did something to to a girl that was very small. She was a cheerleader. She was half my size. Like I was never a big person, but I was an athlete.
Yeah,
so
you're tall. Yeah,
I'm tall and I was strong back then, but not compared to this football player. And he said something that was just so mean, and I got in his face, and I was like, "How dare you?" And I was trying to put him in his place, and he just like picked me up and threw me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I was like, "All right, note to self: don't go after big, stronger people." But then all the guys, like, this is late 90s when I'm in high school, and but there was 3 guys that all got up and got in that guy's face and put him in his place, and I was like, you know what? I didn't enjoy getting thrown across the room, but this guy got told he couldn't speak to the girls like this.
Ever do that to
and don't ever pick a woman up and throw him across the gym. Not okay.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, the injustice. I feel
injustice. Like I'm like, that's not okay. Especially when it's to someone that's not going to stand up for themselves.
Right. Oh yeah.
I'm like, I don't even have to like you.
You're bringing me back to high school. Oh yeah. Like
you would be the same, yeah.
Oh yeah. But I use my words more than my.
That's good.
Yeah, than my fist.
I try to use my words.
I mean, I did slap a guy one time for saying something horrible about my sister. But I like, what's funny is like, I didn't even really cuss, but I like cussed guy. Like, I was like, what? You know what? I just would cuss them out. Because I was so.
A great injustice.
Right.
It's not okay.
Right. Yeah, you can't do that. And so, oh my gosh, that's too.
Yeah, I was at another time. It was my sister's bachelorette party. And I hope my family doesn't watch this. But I was at my sister's bachelorette party, and people drink way too much, and I was the designated driver, so I was probably the only one there that was completely sober. Like, some of the girls were in between, you know, but this one girl's, like, with this guy, like, making out, and I'm like, we're leaving. Like, our party's leaving. Come on, get in the car. Let's go. And she didn't want to go, and the guy's like, leave her alone. She's with me now. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You're a loser, and she's drunk. The only reason she's with you right now is because she's had too much. I'm like, well, you can't have her. And so we start yelling at each other, and the volume's going up in the club. And I saw enough guys that I'm like, I think I'm going to be okay. But it got heated, and I ended up shoving this guy. And I shoved him hard, but it was hard enough to get him away from me. And then 6 guys, I'm in Texas, right? So 6 guys jump in, grab this guy, and they're like, do you need more help? What's going on? I'm like, this guy is being mean and hurting my friends. I just need to get the girls out. And like, we got him. Here you go. And one of the guys grabs this girl and it's like, this girl, you need her? And I'm like, yeah. He tosses her over his shoulder. He's like, I'll bring her to the car. Where's your car? And I'm like, thank you so much. And so I'm like smiling as I get all the girls back in the car, and they're like, all right, you need anything else? And I'm like, no, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm like, my buddy's holding that guy back there. We're not going to let him go until you're out of here. And I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate it. You're so nice. And so like, I get everyone in the van.
Do the place we find ourselves.
Yes. But I feel like I don't know that it's like that today, but back in the early 2000s, I knew that there was going to be at least a good guy, if not multiple. So like in this case, there were 6 good guys that would stick up. They're like, you're a pretty little girl. These are pretty little girls. Like, this isn't okay.
And this guy's bugging you. We're going to take
care of it. Yeah, we're going to take care of it.
Now you would get sued for like pushing
or
I'm hitting.
Sure.
That's why
no, I think the guy would have just broken down crying. Like, you hurt my feelings.
Like, this is why I have friends who advocate for jujitsu.
Okay.
Because they're like, you could get sued now for punching somebody.
Okay, so learn to redirect.
But if you grapple, and I'm like, how do you get them on the floor? Anyways, I have multiple friends who are like so big about it. They're like, and the thing is, like they showed a video of, it was like a guy at a convenience store was being robbed and he knew jujitsu and he got the guy down and pretzeled him for 20 minutes waiting till the cops got there. So he didn't hurt him. He didn't strike him. He just got him in a position where he was able to hold him until the police got there.
Wow.
So I just have friends who are big and they're like, listen, as a woman, because jiu-jitsu, essentially, if a guy's trying to get in between your legs, that's where you want them. Because in jiu-jitsu, that's how you, if they're between your legs, that's how you know how to maneuver them.
Yeah.
It's like, interesting. My daughters will learn.
So my thing is, I learned how to pin him because I wrestled. Right. You know that, yeah? I was captain of the wrestling team in high school.
Oh my God.
I totally was.
That's hilarious.
So I have used wrestling moves on people before, but mine's not just to hold them, it's to pin them to the ground.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I've actually pinned a guy to the ground in a bar that was putting moves on me.
No, you did.
Yes, I totally did. And I had him but then I didn't know what to do with them. Like I had him in a position and I had him down and I think someone else came over and it like got worked out. It was another guy. Like I just always have, my guardian angel must be like a big buff guy and he just shows up in bad situations that I find myself.
You're like your own superhero.
Well, I lived in New Orleans, right? Or I lived in Mandeville on the North Shore.
Oh, I know
for like, yeah. And so, yeah, I just found myself in not the most ideal situations.
Okay, so teach daughters jujitsu
and wrestling.
Part of me, I was like Krav Maga, but that's where you poke them in the that's like
you'll
the
get
Israeli.
In trouble
you'll get in trouble. So okay, I guess jujitsu is what the daughters should be.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Oh my gosh, I probably need to learn too. I'm gonna be like the 70-year-old woman who's like, I'm gonna get my master's now, my PhD now. I'm gonna learn jujitsu. I don't know why I have this accent when I'm 70.
Well, you'll get it, obviously.
I'm gonna all of a sudden.
Well, no, you're in Texas. That's why. So you got to think about how many years you'll be in Texas.
My old ghibli bits are gonna be wobbling around when I do these moves, and So.
And you're still gonna have the long hair. And you're like, hold on, sir. Hold on, Sonny. Let me put my hair back. Yeah. Let me just braid it real quick, and then I'm using a jiu-jitsu move on you.
It's gonna be blue though, or purple. I've always wanted to dye my hair crazy colors. I had friends in high school who they always had a different hair color every week, and I'm like, I'm so jealous. And because like if I were just a musician, I could get away with it.
Oh, that's
you know
fair.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're a musician.
But no,
like,
you could
cool.
still get away with it, I think, because you're also a musician.
I speak to adults though, and like professional. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you can't.
What if you just did like a blue stripe?
Right. I was like, do I just
do it underneath?
Bottom? That's
and then you can pull it back and have it hidden when you speak to adults.
I'm very cool. No, I'm like, I'm gonna be that grandma. I want to be the grandma, not like the cool grandma. Part of me, I'm like, do I want to be the crotchety old grandma? I'm like, kids, get off my lawn, whatever.
No.
But I'm gonna be like the sweet.
Well, I think also being comfortable, I think we'll both be great grandmas.
Yeah.
Because I think we're not afraid to be where we are. Like,
right.
Like we're okay with our ages.
Oh, yeah, I don't
care.
Yeah,
we're not 20 anymore.
You're like, how old
That's
am
okay.
No, I'm like, I don't care. 30, almost 9, 39, almost 9.
Yeah, but like, we're comfortable enough with this.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to just let ourselves go. Like, like, I don't know. Like, we still want to look nice, but we're not going to go overboard and try to look like we're 20. Act like we're 20.
No, I want to be the grandma. It's like, all right, kids, come around. I'm going to give you all the wisdom I got. Let me tell you about sex. Like, let me tell you about.
And I think that's why people ask us.
I mean, not like little kids. Not like in a creepy, not in a creepy way.
No,
here, young adults. Let me tell you all the things your parents.
Adults.
I mean, I already do that. I'm like,
I know.
Here are all the things that your parents were too ashamed to tell you about sex and birthing.
Yes.
And, oh my gosh! So
the things you need to know.
Alob, we've had a couple young adults live with us, and Alob lived with us for a year and a half. And that boy, I was like, son, he calls us mom and dad. He's like 6 years younger, but he's like, hey mom, hey dad. I'm like, son, you're gonna learn everything about NFP. You're going to learn everything about childbirth in this house. Like,
Yep.
we are not.
That was me when I lived with Eddie and Kana. It was like the same age difference. They were just that much older than me, and they were married and had babies, and I wasn't.
You learn all the things.
I was like afraid to step foot in their bedroom. I wouldn't go in there. Like I was like, this is the boundary here, and I would like look after the kids. I was upstairs. My bedroom was upstairs with the kids, and then they were.
But they were the very honest people.
They were so honest, right? So honest, so out there, and like.
And they'll tell you anything.
Any question.
No shame.
Yeah, exactly. And both of them, not just Kana, but any two, right?
I believe it.
So both of them. But it was great for when I got married, and it was like they were my first phone calls, or even when I had postpartum. I remember calling Kana and being like, Kana, Matt won't leave me alone. I am fine. He thinks I'm depressed or something. I'm not. And she's like, okay, that's fine, Cameron. Tell me how you're feeling. And I'm like, I just want everyone to leave me alone, and I just want to stay in my robe and not get out of bed all day, and no one to need me. Anything from me. And she's like, okay, that's fine. How else are you feeling? And she's like, okay, so I'm going to have you call the doctor. You're not depressed, but there's a dark cloud over your head. Because I'm like, I'm not depressed. She's like, no, you're totally not depressed, honey. That's fine. You're fine. Yeah. Call the doctor. Tell him to give you some medicine. And that dark cloud will shove away, and you'll feel so much better. And so I was like, okay, but I'm not depressed. She's like, of course. No, you're not depressed. I'm like, okay, great. So I call the doctor, and then like a day or two later, I'm like, Kana, do you know the medicine he gave me is for postpartum depression? And she was so loving and so sweet. She's like, yeah, it helps with any of the post-baby stuff. Any of that, it'll help with. And I'm like, well, I feel so much better, but I wasn't depressed. And she's like, of course not.
It is. It's like a cloud lifts all of a sudden. It is, and you don't always realize you're in it until...
Yeah.
And then it's gone, and you're like, oh my gosh.
I guess I was.
I guess I was in this cloud that just felt,
horrible.
Yeah, not great. Not great.
No.
But yeah, I feel like we all need those people in our lives who are just being very honest and real.
Yeah. And not think less of you. It's like, if anything, I think more of you, that you're willing to admit you don't have it all together right now, and you need help.
A lot of people don't have that in their lives. Yeah. Like, a lot of people don't have, well, they don't have mentors, but they just most parents just are so filled with shame in their own sexual story and all that, and they just don't even... I mean, even The Place We Find Ourselves, he has a whole episode about this, like, knowing your sexual story and, like, even handing on. Like, it is, oh my gosh, to listen to it. It's like, I'm trying to think what episode it was. If it was, like, in the 60s or 30s. I can't remember.
I feel like I got really into it when he first came out. I listened to a bunch, and then I kind of fell away, and I was doing more Dr. Bob and Jake's thing.
Which I did that first, and still listening to them, but then... started listening to The Place We Find Ourselves, which is so good. But he's like, even if the thing is, like, even when our parents don't say anything about sex, it fills it with shame.
Yeah, it does.
It feels like, and he shares his own story, and it's like, oh my gosh.
My mom. Do you want to know when my mom went to give me the sex talk? I was either a freshman or sophomore in high school, and a good friend of mine got pregnant, and I'm in the car with my best friend Rachel. I feel so bad for poor Rachel. My best friend's in the car with me. And my mom is like, so girls, I think it's time. I'm going to talk to you about the birds and the bees. And we're like, sorry, did you miss the fact that she's pregnant? My friend Rachel was not pregnant, but a mutual friend of ours was pregnant. And we're like, Mom, she's pregnant. Like, there's nothing for you to, no, girls, I need to tell you about some things. And we're like, are you kidding me? I forget how old we were, 15 or 16, but it was like, no, this chat, if you wanted to have this chat, it should have been 5 years ago. You know? And then my mom would also look at my poor friend, and she'd be like, don't worry, one day you'll develop. One day you're going to get boobs. And I'm like, Mom, that is so mean. And at the time, I was rather large-chested, and my poor best friend was very flat. And my mom, like, I think gave her a complex about it. Oh. And I think she did it in, like, a joking way, but that's
doesn't
mean.
matter. Yeah.
I'm like, that's not okay.
Oh, your poor friend.
I know.
Yeah, because you're very, oh man, my sisters and I don't know why I prayed for, like, big boobs. Because I saw my sisters as they're older, and like, oh, I hope I have big boobs. Like, terrible prayer.
That's a terrible prayer. Totally wasted.
It's like, this is so terrible. Terrible. Should never, ever, ever have prayed this.
Mine just kept disappearing as I breastfed. So when I got married, I was like a 34 double D. Mm-hmm. Like, that was marriage. And then, like, every child I breastfed, I just got smaller and smaller. And now I'm like, if I wear a tight undershirt, I barely need a bra.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and then
I like having a smaller chest, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
Because I literally have numbers that don't, that go off the charts.
Yeah.
I literally had a friend who thought I was joking when I told her I was
and it's just that much more expensive too.
It is so expensive. Literally the number when I was pregnant.
You're like, wait, they go into those letters?
They go into JFKLMNs.
Do they really?
Yes.
Oh,
I know. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, when you get.
But hey, good for your babies. I bet you fatten those kids up.
They were like freaking bowling balls. You know how painful that is when you just have a baby. So by the way, for those of you who don't know, when you just have your baby, all the milk comes in and it is like rocks. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh! Take a hot shower. Mm-hmm. That's about it. They take a warm shower, get those things soft again. It is painful.
Yeah, in Ireland, I had my first two in Ireland, and they would bring you in cabbage leaves.
Right,
they would
cabbage
have it
leaves
in the fridge to
help.
put on and help. Yeah,
take a hot or warm shower, and then bring in some cabbage leaves. Or else that mastitis. Oh,
do you know I had mastitis so bad with Avila? They thought it was a lump. They thought I had cancer. So so it was bigger than a golf ball, solid golf ball. And I was in excruciating pain. They admitted me to the hospital. I had to be on IV antibiotics, but they gave me a mammogram with mastitis. I was screaming and crying through it.
Yeah.
And for you ladies that haven't had mammograms, it's not fun. They basically
squish your boob
a lot. And when you have mastitis, if someone so much as touches, you're in tears. It's so painful. Yeah. And it was like bright red and it was so bad.
Why would they do that to you?
They had to rule it out, they said. Okay. But I think you can also rule it out with an ultrasound. But I was in rural Ireland, so they did this, and they were like, we think it's just mastitis, we're going to keep you in.
Yeah.
I was in for a week on IV antibiotics, and then they let me feed the baby, so my baby got to stay with me, which was great. But, it was so bad. So bad. I had everything. I had the thrush, and every baby, I was horrible at breastfeeding. I had C-sections, so my milk supply just never was quite good enough. But I loved it. I loved breastfeeding. And I probably had mastitis at least 40 times.
Oh my gosh.
So many times. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've had it once and it was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, but then just after every baby, it's just trying to prevent them. Just how painful
and I think
it is.
Once you already have it in one milk duct, it's more likely to
get it.
Yeah. So even with my first, I had it multiple times.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
I feel like there needs to be did you do a postpartum or a...
Oh my goodness. Do you know Father Bill Young, Monsignor William Young from Houston? He used to be at St. Thomas More. He was the priest in charge of the Life Teen, what was it called? Life Teen, I don't know, Hub, Life Teen Hub.
Okay,
back in the day when they were doing hubs.
I bet if I saw his face, I'd be like, okay, recognize.
Yes. Okay, so think of just a very good Life Teen type priest, very pro theology of the body. Mm-hmm. So Liam is named after him. He's William after him. But he was coming to visit me in Ireland, and I was supposed to have Liam before, but Father Bill ended up flying in the day I got out of the hospital. And so worlds collided. But I called Courtney Barta, one of my good friends, and was like, hey, I can't even afford a nursing bra. They're 70 euros, 80 euros for one bra. I was like, would you mind buying one and just wrapping it and putting it, and I'll give you the money. And she's like, oh, sure. So she goes to give it to Father Bill so he can bring it. And he's like, what is it? And Courtney's like, I'm not going to tell you. It's just something personal for Cameron. He's like, I'm going to open it. So tell me. And so she ended up telling him. And he's like, oh my goodness. Okay, I'm on it. He calls one of his parishioners who teaches the Leche League. And is like, listen, Cameron needs breastfeeding stuff. Just could you buy her a bunch of stuff? Whatever it is, I'll pay you back. And she's like, no, Father Bill, I'll buy it. It's fine. So there's a Leche League, which is a breastfeeding manual book. There's nipple shields. There's
which
breastfeeding.
Are great.
Right?
Nipple shields. Hey,
yep.
You've never heard of nipple shields.
I mean, it's great. So this is really for the breastfeeding moms or the pregnant moms right now. So breastfeeding bras, tank tops, all this stuff. So all he has in his suitcase is all breastfeeding paraphernalia, right? And then his mask kit and his collar. And so he comes and he starts unpacking his bag. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Father Bill, what would you have done if they stopped you at the airport?
Yes.
If they searched your bag? He's like, well, I guess I would have made the news.
Yeah, he would have.
You totally would have. And then I'm not a cursor.
Even if the people didn't think they've been like, which woman? Why are you bringing this all to a woman?
Are you the father? Are you the
child? Yes. There would have been a lot of assumptions here.
So he came, and I was learning how to breastfeed, and so I just had a really hard time. So because I had a C-section in Ireland, I was cut pelvic bone to pelvic bone. So
And
I have
they don't do that here.
No, they do not do that here. So here, so literally bone to bone, it was my incision.
Oh my god.
Where in the States, it's about this big. So when I had Kiara, it's like just big enough to get the head out. And you're like, holy cow, why is that such a small? So I was just in excruciating pain. They wouldn't give me any pain meds because I have GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, acid reflux. Like I have really bad stomach issues, so they were afraid to give me pain meds. So I had to recover without pain meds. It was so bad. And so as I'm trying to feed, I'm contracting, right?
Yes.
And I'm just in excruciating pain. So I don't curse.
Because when you breastfeed, your uterus begins to contract to go back to its normal size.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing that and you have this gaping wound, it's so painful. So I'm trying to breastfeed this baby, and all these profanities are like 50 curse words would come out of my mouth. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Father Bill's like, you're fine. It's okay. Like he's like a dad to me. So I'm learning how to breastfeed in front of him, and we're figuring it out. Well, when he got back to Houston, so many of my friends were like, what happened with Father Bill when he was over there? Because like they're going to confession, and he asked them, are you, I know you have a baby. I heard some of that. Are you breastfeeding? Thank you so much. It is such a gift that you're giving. He just started affirming all these breastfeeding women.
How painful it is.
How painful it is. He's like, I know. He's like, your penance is just to keep feeding that baby.
Oh.
Like the Lord is shining down with so much mercy and love on you. And guys don't know what you're going through. And I'm so sorry.
Oh my God.
And so they're like, what is going on with this priest? But he kind of had this profound experience with me learning how to breastfeed. And he's like,
and you're cursing and like,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. And he's like, this really is. He's like, this is death to self. This is my body given up for you.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions for the Lord of like, Lord, all the things that women have to
I think it makes us so much closer to the crucifixion.
Well, you just think like the pain that we go through. I'm like, men just have it so easy.
Well, that's why I don't think we should do Exodus 90.
Actually,
people that are like, there should be a women's version. I'm like, no, it's built into our bodies.
Yeah.
We go through not Exodus 90, but we go through dying to ourselves constantly.
Yes. A lot of pain. Yeah. A lot of pain.
We do not need that.
Suffering.
It's a boy thing. You boys do Exodus 90.
It's like you need to create suffering for yourselves because you
don't have it built in. We have it built in. We don't need to create anymore.
Oh my gosh. So one thing, like the postpartum thing that no one told me about, or I wish was freaking hemorrhoids.
Yes.
Horrible.
Oh my goodness.
By the way, if you ever experience hemorrhoids, just even from antibiotics, oh my God, the gut thing. Epsom salt bath immediately.
Yes.
Immediately. Yes. Epsom salt baths 20 minutes a day, if not twice a day.
Yeah.
And
use that hemorrhoid cream. That stuff works.
Oh my God.
I was like, mine aren't that bad. I don't need it. And I don't know why. I think there was something about the idea of it. I'm like, that's gross and disgusting. Men need that. I don't. Obviously.
Postpartum, trying to push out a poop after it was worse than, for me, it was worse than childbirth. I'm like,
I had to hold my C-section scar. Like I always had to be pushing in.
Yeah.
And
oh gosh, yeah. It just, so Epsom salt baths, 20 minutes a day, multiple times a day.
Yes.
Get those things.
Yeah, and get them under control. Don't let them.
Oh no, because then they'll become filled with blood and it's horrible.
It's way worse. And then you need more medical intervention, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. I think the majority of women end up with hemorrhoids that have had babies.
Well, you push
I don't even think, because I went through labor for like 20 hours, but I didn't actually push a baby out, right? But I had hemorrhoids horrible too.
Yeah, so it's possible with both, because I pushed that baby out and probably pushed my whole butthole out.
You're like, I'm sorry, this turned inside out.
Sorry,
how can we,
we're just being real talk here.
Yeah, that's our whole thing. We're just,
oh my gosh,
Jackie, that's what I love about you. We're just very real. You don't know what's going to come out of our mouths.
Oh Lord, you don't. No, you
Do you also think externally? Like, I don't think about things and then say it. I'm saying the things, and then I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Or do you think and then speak? Matt thinks and then speaks. I don't.
Does he though?
No, he doesn't. No, that's true. I don't think he does either.
So it just depends. Sometimes I'm like, I probably shouldn't say that out loud. Other times I'm like, I just don't care. People need to know this.
Yeah.
If this will help, that's my thing. If this will help somebody, this will help you, and you don't have to go through the same horrible, excruciating pain, then I will give you advice about it.
Yes.
That's my thing.
Yeah,
if it helps somebody, like I don't just say things to say things. I am like, I like That's why I'm going to be the grandma.
Yes, who says all the things.
Let's talk about hemorrhoids today, people. Yes. I don't know why.
I got some hemorrhoid cream I'll get
for you. Just tell you, I got some hemorrhoid cream. And
actually, that should be a gift. When we have friends that have babies, we should give them a bag of Epsom salt and hemorrhoid cream.
That's very brilliant. Yeah.
We should totally do that.
Because it doesn't happen with every baby. I think, for me it happened with baby 1. And then, was that a dog?
It's a dog or a child. Who is outside the door? If it is a child, show yourself. No, it's the dog.
Like scratch. You just heard this breathing.
I have a giant dog, just so y'all know.
Giant, like you could ride it. Giant.
Yeah, he's huge.
But the sweetest.
So he's so sweet, but he's breathing outside the door and scratching the door.
I love you're like the most phlegmatic.
He is. We needed phlegmatic in this family because we don't have any phlegmatic.
Yeah, and the dog is the one that brings the
phlegmatic balance.
Phlegmatic
He's very chill. Just
oh my gosh. But hearing your stories as a child, I'm like, this makes complete sense about your children now. Like now knowing your children, that same sass and like, I should have punched him in the face. Like.
Totally. And one of my children in particular, anything that happens, she's like, I will punch that person in the face. Oh, like, don't actually punch them in the face.
Don't be like mommy.
Like,
we're gonna be.
And that's like, I know where she gets that from. I'm like, that's fair. That's totally where she gets that from.
Oh my god.
And then also just thinking you're like, so even when like Kiara, even when she was little, she was like 3 years old and someone stole a balloon from Avila. We were like at a play park thing or whatever, or like a McDonald's playground. And I'm watching this go down. Someone steals something from Avila. Avila just stands there and starts crying quietly, but like crying. And my 3-year-old spots it, or maybe she was 2, and she's like, she marches over to this boy, double her size, because the boy was bigger than Avila. So Avila was probably like 5, and this boy was probably 6. Mm-hmm. And she marches over to him and goes, no, bad boy. Grabs the balloon, Avila balloon, bad boy. Bad boy. And she's like this tall and the boy's this tall and she's yelling at him and pointing her finger in his face. And I'm watching the mom to see if the mom's, because I've watched the whole thing go down. I'm like, oh gosh. And I'm waiting to see if the mom says anything. Yeah. She doesn't, because I would have been like, no, your son stole something from my daughter.
Right.
So she like puts this boy in his place, goes back over, gives the balloon to Avila and turns back and goes to the boy. And the boy was just like, and like just walked off.
And she was 3.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. Like it's in you.
That
like,
level of sass.
That level of sass and cholericness.
Yeah. Like justice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the justice. Like, I prayed for all my daughters to be sassy and, holy and sassy and funny like St. Teresa of Avila.
And they are.
And they sure are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they sure are. I mean, they're sweet. My 2 ones that have actually reason, they're very sweet. Yeah. Especially my little redhead curly girl. She's super sensitive soul and just very like mama. She mothers the 2-year-old.
Yeah,
that's very sweet. She's very sweet. But her tantrums, woo.
Yeah.
They used to be off the charts.
When my sister would do that, we're like, oh, here comes red. And she would and then when she said, here comes red, because she's a redhead too, her face would start to turn red and then her eyes would bug and she would just explode. Like, whoa. Which is funny because she doesn't have an anger anything now. No. Like she's fine.
You're the one who has taken all the anger.
That's fair. Yeah, I filled that bucket and that role in childhood.
I will take the anger, which is so funny because when people meet you, they're like, what? You don't seem like an angry
I'm not an angry person. No. It's just my go-to emotion.
Gotcha.
So so if anything happens, I just, and I'm a spaz too. Like I just react very strongly. Mm-hmm. So like for this training thing, they were doing a meditation with your eyes closed, setting the scene. She picked the wrong desk to bang on. She banged on my desk to like start on. I was like, ah! And I was like, I opened my eyes and I made fists. And everyone else in the room opened their eyes and was like, what the heck went on? I'm like, I'm so sorry. You startled me. And she's like, that I was supposed to startle you, but wow, you have a great startle reaction. I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to react. So
the wrong person's desk to bang on.
She like banged on. I was like, ah! I was like, I'm sorry. I'm not going to punch you. I apologize. But I like the whole like fight or flight, every situation I turn to fight.
Wow.
I never would flight.
I don't know. I think I might. I don't know. Sometimes I freeze. I think I'm a.
Are you? Okay.
I don't know. That's a good. It's a really.
And I'm not a freezer either. I'm an action.
It depends what it is. Like sometimes I'm willing to step up and be, but other times I'm kind of like, what is happening? What is happening? Like, I'm definitely not the Navy SEAL in the situation coming. I wish I were. I want to be like but I think sometimes I just.
What's Bobby? What is he?
Oh, he's definitely not. Well, it depends what it is. Like, because there will be times I'm very proud of him for like really stepping up and fighting. It just, for me, if like the mama bear instinct comes in, ooh, if it's
mama bear is dangerous.
It like fills you with rage. Like all of a sudden you just get this, like if you see something, it's like immediate, like filled with like, that's the fight. Mm-hmm. So it depends what it is. If it's like around my kids or my husband or my family, it definitely feels like immediate, that if there's a situation, it's like, oh, hell no.
Yes.
But other things, it's like, if I'm like kind of figuring out like what's going, if there's something weird happening,
yeah, you
like,
got to figure out the situation. No, that's fair.
Kind of like, so it depends what it is.
Yeah. I feel like I could potentially freeze in that situation, like trying to figure it out. But I normally just like, I react. I don't think. Yeah. I don't think.
Punch him in the face.
Just punch him in the face.
What's going on?
But Kiara's like that too. So we were at a pool and they were doing swim lessons. I had to go to a doctor's appointment. So I left my kids with a friend. I was like, I can take them with them or leave them. She's like, oh, just leave them. But she was getting her baby ready and her toddler, she had already taken off her floaties and the toddler got in the pool who couldn't swim. And so Avila's standing by the big sister. So there's two like 13-year-olds watching it go down. It's like, can she swim? And so Avila's trying to process. Kiara sees it happening from the other side of the pool. And my 10-year-old just takes off swimming, grabs the baby, pulls it up out of the water as the mom's noticing to come over. And so the mom's there, but the time she pulls it out of the water, I was like, Kiara, what happened? She's like, oh, I didn't think. I just acted. Wow. Like, it's just like a natural, like, I don't know what it is, but a natural. I was young. I probably was like 11 or 12 and I wanted to babysit. And it was a neighbor that was like interviewing me for babysitting. Yeah. And she was feeding the baby and the baby started choking. And I think there was 3 little kids and the baby started choking and the mom froze. Like she just straight up froze. And I was like, I grabbed the baby, pulled it out, swish, hit it over and it coughed and it started crying. And then I started like shaking. I'm like, are you okay? So I'm like talking to the mom because the mom's like frozen and then just started bawling. And she's like, I didn't do anything. I'm like, it's okay. You didn't need to do anything. I got it. Like I took a CPR class, you know? Yeah. And so like I sit her down, she calms down. She's like, you're hired, by the way. Like you're hired. You're totally going to babysit my kids. And it was like my first babysitting job. But it was one of those that the mom was like, I didn't react. Like I just froze. Wow. And I think sometimes you don't know what to do. And you're just like, is this, and I think it's like, is this really happening? And trying to figure out if it is. Yeah. And then maybe she would have reacted, but because I just reacted more quickly.
Wow. Yeah, my one of my first babysitting jobs, I had like a 2, 4, and 6-year-old. The 2-year-old was potty training. She was like this cute little redhead curly girl.
Oh, there you go.
And she had diarrhea and got it all over.
Oh
no. I don't know how this kid
was she an diarrhea everywhere,
all over the walls of the bath. I'm like, oh my gosh! I literally just stuck her in the tub. I'm like 14 at the point this time. I'm like, oh my gosh! Like I was
like, I'm not prepared for this.
No, and I just hosed her. I was like, and then I had to clean up all the poop.
And this is pre cell phones. It's not like you can text the mom and say, please come home sooner.
Yeah, no. Oh my gosh! So I was like, I'm okay with the Lord calling me to have children whenever that is. But I didn't have any what's it called? Romantic notions about like child life or like having children and like, and then I lived by the Bartas.
Oh yeah.
So they showed me like the reality of marriage. I just think that's so good for
reality of marriage and the chaos of kids.
Yeah.
Like their kids are beautiful, but they're chaotic.
And then
like my kids and your kids.
Yeah. So like for me as a single person, I was like, Lord, like everyone, because everyone's always like the grass is greener on the other side, right? Like, so I know married couples who look at single people and they're like, oh, it must be nice to blah, blah. I'm like, okay, stop. How about like we be happy where we are?
Yeah.
Happy when
I would not want to go back to being single at all.
I was very happy being single and having the things that I could do. I'm like, I can buy a plane ticket anywhere in the world and travel around the world. I can go on vacation, not have to consult. I mean, I can buy a $3,000 guitar and not have to ask my husband, you know, like, is this okay? You know, whatever.
That was great for then.
Yeah. And I was at the time, I knew, like, I know this will change. Yeah. And I'm not going to idolize marriages because I know that they have sacrifices too. And now that I'm married, I don't want to look at single people like, oh, well, good, must be nice. Yeah, because I know people who do that. And it's like, I think you're just miserable. Like, no matter where you are.
Yeah. You wouldn't, like, you're miserable now. And even if you found Mr. Right and got married, you'd still be miserable then.
Yes.
Like, you've got to work on being content and happy here.
Yes.
And I really do think, and I say this to women all the time, and I'm like, like, as much as you can, especially before marriage, it's so much easier to take your healing journey serious and your prayer journey.
Yeah.
Like, become as holy as you can now. So then when you have kids or a husband, it'll be that much easier.
But yeah, I'm always like, be as healthy and holy as you can be
Yes.
now. Like, start it now. Start the journey now.
Yes.
Because it only helps things be better.
Yeah, neither of us did that, Matt nor I. Like, we also just got married really young. And
How old were you guys when you got married?
He was 22 and I was 24.
Okay. Yeah, you guys were young.
Yeah.
Whereas Bobby and I did have like 10 years
Mhm.
of going through it, and he had gone through therapy, and we'd both gone on quite the journey before we met each other around 28. I got married at 29. He was 28, I think. And
so you guys were able to do more healing prior to.
yes.
And we did. I don't mean we didn't do any healing.
But you were young.
We were kids.
And you're still growing.
And that
you're
taught us
growing
so
together.
many things. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that foundation that gave us.
Right.
And I think we both had a decent prayer life,
Yeah.
which was really good. But I definitely wish that, and I definitely thought, I looked at all my friends that were married and I was like, oh yeah. Like, I didn't expect it to be perfect, but I wanted to be where they were at.
Right. Right. And that's not going to always happen. Yeah.
No.
But yeah, I highly recommend just start the healing journey now, because it doesn't get any easier.
It's
in
harder
marriage.
because you're still doing it in marriage,
Yeah, of
but now
course,
you
yeah.
have way less time.
Yeah, I mean, when I was single, I was going to daily mass, adoration all the time. I'm able to journal, like, just have so much free time.
Yeah, that journal, this was 2 months ago, and I have my prayer journal that I'm like, oh, I need to put it all in here and pray about it, and
Yeah.
I haven't found the time to do it.
And you can have like, as a parent, it's so much harder to have a schedule.
Yeah.
Because you have kids who break the schedule all the time.
Yeah.
Like, even the sleep, like, so we did reform, and I was telling them, I was like, it would be nice to get 9 hours of sleep, but I have a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
By the way, I personally think toddler sleep is way worse than baby time. Like, for me, because I co-slept with my babies, and it was awesome, because so I tried to do it the pediatrician way, where they're like, put him in a crib, and I'm like, I was a zombie.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Horrible.
I do much better when my baby's in my bed.
So, and
then you also can breastfeed and still be asleep.
well, that's the thing. And then the baby never wakes up,
Yeah.
and they don't poop, because they never fully awake. And then you don't have to spend 2 hours getting them back to. So that's always my only unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
Is co-sleeping helps you and your sleep, if you're able to. Now that's the hard part, when you're not able to breastfeed.
Right.
I don't know what you would
But
do.
even so, like, even when Peter was on a feeding tube, I had him in bed with me.
Yeah.
And
which
so
90-something% of the world does. Because pediatricians, like, you're going to kill your baby. It's so weird. Like, you're going to roll over your baby.
I always made
No.
sure Matt wasn't too close, so I would sleep
Yeah.
like this and the baby would be here, so Matt would hit my arm. I was never nervous about me, which is funny because he's a light sleeper and I'm a deep sleeper. And I used to be such a deep sleeper, like, my siblings couldn't wake me up. Like, I slept through a hurricane. Like, I am just... But when I had babies, I became a light sleeper.
Yeah.
I was just so in tune with them. And I also feel like you almost woke up knowing that they needed to feed, and you just, like, turn over sideways, and then they...
Yeah, Bobby would stay on his little tiny quadrant. He would never move, which is great. And then I would be over here with baby, and because you're next to baby, you kind of feel the baby go,
Yes.
and you just initially put your boob in their
Attach.
mouth, and then you both fall asleep again, and you go, and I would put the baby over her and switch sides.
Yeah, but even Peter, who wasn't able to breastfeed for a while because of the feeding tube, I still had him in bed, and he would sleep better with me.
Yeah.
And then he also, I just always had him skin to skin because he had breathing issues and feeding issues. And so I knew that I would regulate his breathing and his heart rate by being skin to skin. So I just always had him in my undershirt.
So I just, you don't have to for any parents who's so exhausted, I'm like, listen,
It helped me.
it helps so much with your sleep.
Yeah.
Like, if you take it or leave the advice, you don't have to take it.
Matt wanted the baby out of the room, and then I never slept. And then I ended up
Mm.
sleeping in the other room.
Right. Yeah.
And then eventually it was like, well, this is ridiculous. I want my wife, so fine, bring the baby in our room or bring the baby in
For
our bed.
us, around the 5-month mark, around 5 to 7 months, but mostly around 5 months, almost like my presence kept them awake.
Yes.
Like, because
Yeah.
normally if I slept with them, they'd fall asleep. But around 5 months, something happens, and they essentially were like, "Want to play?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's time for a crib now." And it was great. Like, oh my gosh. But anyways,
Yeah,
so toddlers.
and listening to your body and listening to the baby, I agree. There's a point, and I don't know if I remember an exact age, but I think it differed for my kids. So like
Yeah.
my oldest was in a crib on his own way sooner than my second, third, and fourth. Like they just weren't ready for that for whatever reason.
Well, so that's why I think toddler sleep patterns are much harder because they're waking you up at one. Like Esther, who's 2.5. I mean, she'd have days she'd just wake up at 1 a.m. and burst in our room. I'm like, oh God. And then sometimes I get like immediate migraines if I'm like awakened out of like a deep sleep. Or like she'll come at 4 a.m. I'm like, oh, come on, Esther. Like, so for me, the toddler stage, when they have these weird regressions.
Yeah.
Even if they're sleeping through the night for however, and then all of a sudden they just weird regression. They start dreaming or something. I'm like, to me, the toddler sleep stuff is much harder for me because our baby slept so well in bed with us. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the toddler, then like, oh, have great night of sleep. And like, no.
You're like, it's not doable.
Well, so yeah, that all coming back to like, as a parent, your time is not your own. I think, because we were talking about like single, when you're single,
and you control your sleep schedule. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go to bed at 9 a.m. Or 9 p.m. and I'm going to wake up at 7 a.m. And you can do that all the time.
Right.
And that's one of the things I'm doing the same study, and it's very good and I'm enjoying it, but I love that they're like, it depends on your season in life.
Right.
It's easier for me now because my youngest just turned 8, but
right.
he still will have mornings.
And my oldest
like,
is 8.
Yeah. But he came in my room yesterday at like 3 a.m. and I didn't go back to sleep after.
Well, sometimes they're sick and they're projectile vomiting all over.
Yeah.
I had, for some reason in the spring, oh my gosh, it was like every weekend that I had, every single time I had.
I'll be out in a little bit, buddy, okay? Yeah, do whatever schoolwork you can, but I'll be out in a little bit.
We need to go.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, every time I had a talk, I had a kid coming in, projectile vomiting, having an earache, and I was like, oh my, like waking up at 1 a.m. Anyways, yeah, we actually have to go.
By God's grace. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for watching us. We gotta go, because we gotta take her to the airport.
Yes.
But we've enjoyed the show. Peter, it was actually perfect timing to
There you go.
interrupt.
Because I was like,